I've often said that Disney Pixar's A Bug's Life is one of their most underrated feature films they've ever produced. I understand I'm in the minority here, but I actually think it rivals its predecessor Toy Story, in the sense that all the characters are incredibly memorable, the story, though arguably a tad predictable, is consistently engaging, and the animation is nothing less than fantastic. It is, in retrospect, extremely ambitious, and I think it deserves a great deal more credit than it gets. But we're not here today to talk about the movie itself. No, we're here to talk about the video game, specifically the PS1 version, which has somehow become something of a forgotten hidden gem in the PlayStation canon. Yes, in 1998, A Bug's Life the game was released, courtesy of Disney Interactive, and this creepy looking thing. Early reviews for the game were bizarrely rather harsh. Now, I'll admit I may be somewhat biased. This was actually the first video game I ever played, but even replaying it today, the game remains engaging. Granted, it's a little dated and formulaic, especially by today's standards. From the first level, you can instantly tell that the controls aren't going to be too difficult to grasp, and the level itself can be completed in about 30 seconds if you're not too bothered about achieving 100%. Enemies can be vanquished with berries, so you begin the game with a standard red berry before upgrading to a blue super berry, which is double the strength. The next most powerful berry is the green homing berry, followed closely by the purple mega homing berry, which is a little stronger and faster at targeting enemies. The most powerful, however, is the gold berry, which is also the hardest to locate. Once all enemies are defeated with this berry, they are eliminated forever, and you're rewarded with one of 3 success tokens for the level. Felix Harvester and the Mine Plant, which you can grow later in the game, are also as effective as the gold berry. The other 2 success tokens can be obtained by collecting all 50 pieces of grain in a level, and by spelling the name Flick, F-L-I-K. But then things aren't so straightforward. By the time you get to about level 12 and 13, your berry upgrades aren't so easy to find. In fact, in level 13, no other berries can be found at all, meaning you have to think of other ways to mimic the effects of the gold berry. Personally, I find this quite clever. Not only does this make the game more challenging as it progresses, but it also follows the events of the movie pretty closely. If you'll remember, by this point in the film, the grasshoppers have taken all the food, hence why Ant Island is looking pretty scarce. The game revolves mostly around seeds and collecting seed tokens. Collecting all the coloured seed tokens basically changes what you plant. It's very hard to explain briefly, but it's quite simple to get the gist of it. Pressing the square button allows you to pick up any seed that's not embedded in the soil. Any seeds that are embedded in the soil, well, if you press square near them, you do this. Yeah. For some reason. I find it strange that the following Pixar game, Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue, released in 1999, seemed to garner quite a bit of attention at the time of its release for being hugely engaging, when it actually follows a very similar structure to A Bug's Life. Both games contain 15 main levels, and every 3 levels take place in a new area or zone. The last level of every zone is a boss battle. Now, this might just be my own personal opinion, but this structure works far better in A Bug's Life, mostly due to the fact that the boss levels serve a purpose and are mostly derived from events in the movie. In Toy Story 2, the majority of the bosses come right the hell out of nowhere and bear very little, if any, relevance to the plot. I mean, seriously, what the hell is that thing? Now, I have to concede here that the gameplay in Toy Story 2 is somewhat better. The inclusion of Buzz's laser was probably more appealing to kids at the time than hurling coloured berries at various insects, and it is indeed at the combat where A Bug's Life tends to fall a bit flat. Besides throwing berries, you can perform an abdomen bounce, essentially meaning you can sit on spiders, which becomes a weirder concept the more you think about it. Close combat is, to put it lightly, an abomination. The only other form of attack is a kick ability, which can only be activated while you're walking by holding R2. The trouble is that Flick takes far too long to respond to warrant using the kick very often, and whenever you do, the physics are just odd. His foot seems to lightly tap the enemy, and a millisecond later it explodes. The combat is also a little underwhelming, since a lot of the enemies don't seem to be doing a great deal of harm, at least not enough to warrant bludgeoning them to death with a piece of fruit. Oh, hi. You alright, mate? You okay? Everything alright? The soundtrack is surprisingly atmospheric at times and captures the mood pretty well. I'll admit that Toy Story 2's soundtrack was perhaps more varied, but for A Bug's Life it actually helps capture the ambience of the setting. Sometimes the repetitious melodies can get a little annoying, but for the most part it's bouncy, fun, and even dramatic when it wants to be. I also like the fact that once you've found the circus bugs, they actually all serve a purpose and help you out in some form. Though I can't help but feel as though some of them were just thrown in there. Heimlich's tummy bounce doesn't serve much purpose other than to get your harvester back up onto the ledge, and even then you can, well, walk.
It's okay, you can jump on my tummy!
Okay, that's a pretty odd thing to say out and about, don't you think? Oh, and speaking of weird vocals, I feel like I need to give at least some credit to Dave Foley, who voices Flick. He talks constantly throughout the game, and for me it never gets annoying. It's actually kind of funny and endearing, and actually helps capture the spirit of the movie, even if the game never quite reaches those heights. In fact, personally I think a lot of the voice acting is pretty good, although that might have something to do with the fact that all of the characters are well established already. Most of the other side and background characters are a little two-dimensional. Sorry. Most annoying level. Okay, so these days I don't particularly find any levels overly taxing, but growing up this level was the biggest pain to complete, mostly due to the fact that I was kinda too afraid to progress because of these pissing things randomly falling from the sky, whatever they are. Anyway, even though I eventually overcame my fears of this, the level to me remains the most difficult to complete 100% because of its sparse collectibles and the constant need to transport seeds over riverbed cracks. For first-timer completionists, this level is irritating beyond belief. The hardest boss, Malt. I can understand if someone argued Thud the Horsefly for this position, but that's only likely because of the level's chaotic setting, by which I mean you're more likely to be killed by a rolling bottle cap than Thud himself. This level takes difficult to a whole new level by having you fumble for seed tokens to grow berry upgrades, while your ill-informed friends, yes your friends, decide to persistently throw red berry bunches at you, making the task in question even more of a challenge as you keep picking up the weakest bunch. Throw into that equation the fact that Malt is the only boss who pursues you on foot, and you have one of the most awkward encounters in a boss level, particularly when you're trying to heave this hulking seed about the place at the same time. Irritating just doesn't cover it. The easiest boss, the bird. No, really. Surprisingly, the bird, despite being by far the largest boss in the entire game, and the most threatening, is piss easy to dispose of. You simply have to collect the super berry and, well, that's just about it really, just keep throwing at it. And if you want 100% completion, you just collect the gold berry. The bird will then fly higher, but it doesn't take a genius to work out that you need to lure it back down with a berry shooter. The arena you do battle in, and the music that accompanies it, is very effective. It's just a shame that the level itself fails to meet expectations by being so bland. Most challenging puzzle. For this, I nominate level 13, Grasshopper's Leave. In this level, Hopper takes Atta hostage and you have to find a way to rescue her. What follows is perhaps the first time the game really pushes you to think for a solution. By this point, they expect you to be clued up on your seed tokens, as this knowledge is critical for completing the level, whether you want 100% or not. Overall, I'd say this game is pretty entertaining and one of the best for following the movie it's based on pretty damn accurately. There are only a couple of shortcomings, but for the most part this game is incredibly fun, or it was in 1998 anyway. It doesn't exactly meet the grandeur of the movie, but it's nonetheless an impressive game whichever way you look at it.